Chris here, back with another mini PC review for you. This one is another one from Beelink. It's been a while since I reviewed their other previous models. They were AMD powered ones. And this right here is a Intel powered one. So it has the Core i5. That's where it gets the name from. It's the GTI, the I being the i5. And it's the 8259U that this is powered by. Now that chip does have the Iris Plus graphics 655. So it's a step up from the typical integrated Intel graphics. As you'll see in this in-depth review, this configuration that I have has 16 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM in dual channel, a 512 gigabyte NVMe SSD. You can also add a 2.5-inch hard drive or SSD, or an M.2 22 by 80 SATA 3 drive is also supported in this particular mini PC. It's got two fans in it that are giving us the active cooling that this has, and I'll be covering the fan noise, thermals, the performance, you name it, will be covered in this in-depth review here of Beelink's GTI. And looking at what we get in the box, so you get a user manual. Okay, they just go through all of the ports and everything else on there. A quick guide here on how to install RAM, the SSD, and a 2.5-inch drive. We get some screws, both for that 2.5-inch drive and the VESA mounting bracket, which I also have here. That's in the box, of course. Just a small little bracket there to mount it onto the back of a monitor or a TV. Then a cable here and the connector for the SATA 3 drive, if you're going to be installing that. We get a normal sized HDMI cable right here, and then a very short one as well, which you would use if you were going to be mounting this onto the back of a TV or a monitor. And lastly, our power supply. So this one, an EU power supply, maximum output is 51 watts. And in this review, I will be monitoring the power consumption at the wall as well. On to our build and design and all the ports on this particular mini PC. So Beelink have had a very good build quality for me, and this one's no exception, just like the other mini PCs. And we've got dual ray mics right here, as you can see. So this outside's made out of an alloy. Type-C port here, USB 3.1. This does support video out up to 4K 60. We've got 3 displays out in total on this mini PC. This is our audio in and out, so mic in and 3.5 out. 2 USB 3.0s. This is to clear the BIOS, so it is a completely unlocked BIOS to us. We can mess around with a lot of different settings, and some of those settings will get us into trouble. That's why the reset is here, and very good to have. And our power button. So on the back, you will see we've got our 2 other main display outs here. So DisplayPort, this is a 1.4A, and HDMI 2.0A as well. So that's 4K 60 out of both of those there. And here we do have 2 USB 2s, 2 USB 3s, dual gigabit LAN ports. Both of these are from Realtek, and the exit vents right here. So important not to block this. And they also label right there, do not cover this, because that's where the hot air has been pushed out of this particular mini PC. And this, of course, is our DC in for power. And on our right side and the left is an intake vent. This does say GI5, the i5 standing for the Core i5. This one has the 8259U in it, and this is exactly the same here on the other side, as you can see. On the top of the lid right here, so this is made out of plastic. It has a texture to it, and why they've done this is because it does have, of course, the wireless antennas below it, and this means we get the best antenna reception possible there with the Wi-Fi 6 card, Intel AX200 that's in this with Bluetooth 5. And on the back right here, that is where you will find where the VESA mount is located. That's where you would mount it onto the back of it right there. And there's this little rubber tab too. That's to help us pull this rear lid off, which I'm going to do now to quickly show you the accessible internals. So they do warn of high temperatures here, because if you were running this, you powered it off and then you went to open it up, yeah, it could be a little bit warm, well, hot inside here. So the 2.5-inch drive, if you're going to install one, would go here. You can see there are the mounting points there that's labeled for us, the M3 by 5 screws. And under here are where we can install an additional M.2 drive, which I'll now show you because I'm going to remove this top metal brace here. And so this is where we can access now our RAM. So you can see I've got two SODIMMs installed here because I have the 16GB model here, and the 512GB NVMe drive is slotted into the NVMe slot there. There's a SATA 3 one too as well. So if you wanted to add an additional, say, 2TB, you can install one there. And notice that they have put heat sinks as well. So this metal plate is also acting as a nice, big, huge passive heatsink for our SSDs. And if you look closely, right down here, you will find our wireless card. So that Intel AX200 Wi-Fi 6 card with Bluetooth 5 is soldered onto the motherboard. So we cannot replace this card, but it is a very quick one. In theory, it can do well over 2 gigabits per second transfers. And I can get out of this card about 1.4, 1.5 with my router I have here. Wi-Fi 6, of course. So inside our BIOS here, which is an inside BIOS, this one has every single possible option you can think of in the advanced tab here. So boot order, we've got power limit, we've got CPU configuration, thermal configuration, memory overclocking. So this isn't actually overclocking because we cannot increase the multiplier on the cores, but we can undervolt. So a lot of settings in here can get you into quite a bit of trouble and cause the BIOS to be, well, bricked. Frozen completely, it won't boot up correctly, and that's why we've got that reset button on the front. And once you get it fully powered up with the first screen on Windows 10, you will be greeted with the following language packs that are pre-installed on this Windows 10 image. Windows is all now set up, and just a few things to point out that it does come with Windows 10 Pro, the edition they have used, and it's version 2004. So you still will have to run, of course, Windows updates to get the patches, security patches and everything like that too that will pull through. Now, this particular CPU is an interesting one. It is 8th gen. It is, yes, old now in 2021, but it is still a reasonably good chip. Now, the max TDP is 28 watts on this one. The maximum turbo is 3.8 gigahertz. And our memory, just to confirm, it is running in dual channel. You can see the timings there if you're into that, and that really matters to you. And the graphics there. So it does have the Iris Plus graphics 655, which is really the special thing about this particular chip, is it is so much better than the standard UHD, the 630 or the 620 graphics, as you see later on when I get into the gaming performance. Now, our SSD, I don't know what brand it is. It's just one of their own ones I think they've made up, because all it does show in Device Manager or the hardware ID is just simply 512 gigabyte SSD. That's it. Now you can see from these speeds, it's not amazing for a NVMe drive. It's not the fastest out there, but this is still so much quicker. We're talking way quicker than SATA 3 speed. So that's the good thing there. But if you wanted faster, of course, then you would buy yourself, say, a 1 terabyte Samsung 970 Evo Plus, put that in there and gain much better speed. So free available space, we have 443 gigabytes, which should be ample to start with. And of course, you can expand upon that either 2.5-inch drive or install a SATA 3 M.2 drive in this 22 by 80. And then down in our device manager, you will see here that this is the fingerprint reader. As I mentioned, it tends to work quite well, probably about 9 times out of 10 for me. And here is the network devices. So Realtek for the 2 gigabit LANs in there, LAN ports we have. And our wireless 6, which is the AX200. Very good card in this. It cannot be upgraded. Now, my maximum transfers on my current router are about 1.4 gigabits per second. In theory, we should be able to get 2.4 gigabits per second. It depends, of course, on your Wi-Fi 6 router and how fast it is. So it's now been a few days of testing out this mini PC, and I wanted to start with a couple of basics here. That Windows, very, very quick. The start menu loads in fast, no lag there. It's not like the Gemini Lakes that would be a little bit slow with that. Now, media files. This is a very good machine for playing back. High demand files here, high bit rate. So this one's 140, 10-bit HEVC, and you can see that's smooth. Skipping ahead. No problems. So that looks great on this mini PC, no problems. And even more demanding, HDR. And this is 4K. Okay, so 4K, 60 frames per second. Again, smooth, flawless, no problems at all with these files. Now, 4K 60 is what I'm getting from the Type-C port. However, the HDMI, it seems to only be HDMI 1.4a because I cannot get over 30 hertz refresh rate. So 60 is just from the Type-C port for HDMI, and then the display port also works at 4K 60. So it's a little bit of a disappointment there that I can't seem to get. I don't think it's an HDMI 2 port there, sadly. So the typical benchmarks I do run here. Take a look at the performance. So this one is Cinebench R15. Nothing amazing here. So these are stock power limits, not undervolted. This is what you get when you get it out of the box here. You can see it's well behind some of the other ones I've reviewed here in the channels, like the Core i9s, for example, and even the Ryzen 7s. Well, that was some laptops there. Miles ahead, of course, as you'd expect. So it's a dated processor, but if you do undervolt and increase the power limits, you should be able to get around 800 CV. So you can boost the performance a little bit there. And this is Cinebench R20. Again, nothing amazing there. It falls behind quite a few others that I have reviewed in the channel. But it's not too bad. This is that kind of performance there. Well, it's all right. But when we have a look at a few other benchmarks that I did run here. So this is Geekbench 5. And this score is actually better than the Ryzen 7, the 3750H I just reviewed. That was a Minis Forum PC. So this is actually scoring better here. You can see that was that one. This is the comparison. You can see single core score 900 versus just over 1,000. And even the multi-core score is slightly better there. Actually, it's about 500 points higher, which is good. And then the 3D performance, PC Mark performance here. This is it. The mini PC with the Ryzen, that is, sorry, the 3750H. And slightly higher here on this Intel, the Core i5-8259U. Only slightly higher, though. It depends on what you look at with the scores here, because the web score is lower, the app score is lower on the AMD, but other scores are a little bit higher there. So it really depends on what you are after. And this is then Night Raid. So that was first with the AMD, the last mini PC I reviewed. And graphics score a little bit higher here. CPU score is a bit lower, and that's why we have a general higher score here. So there's not really that much in it. That is with the Vega 10 graphics, and this being, of course, that Iris Pro, the Iris graphics, which is the 655. So a little bit better there. And for benchmarks, lastly, Pass Mark 10. And that gave me a score of just over 3,000 there. So those benchmarks, these ones here, you can actually run on your own hardware. Test it out to see if you're going to get a good upgrade or this is going to actually be a downgrade. So make sure you just do that or get an idea of the general performance to expect. I'll do a 4K editing test now. So this one is Adobe Premiere Pro. And what I have in the timeline here is set the preview window as well to just a quarter. And this seems to be fast. It doesn't seem to lag too much, I have noticed. So no real issues there with that. With just a basic edit, mind you. So if I was color grading this video and I had a lot of different transitions and things, expect the performance to suffer because we don't have a dedicated GPU. And to see how long it will take to export now 1 minute of footage right here, this is set to the YouTube 4K preset. And I will be timing this, of course. So I'm going to hit start on that now and export. All right, so it's just about to hit 100%. As soon as that bar disappears, I will hit pause. So there we go. That was approximately, you could say, 1 minute and 11 seconds to encode at the YouTube preset 1 minute of footage. So that's not too bad at all for a mini PC. And onto our thermals and power use. So right now doing basically nothing. The mini PC is using 11.5 to 12.5 watts. That's from my wall meter. And I have seen it peak. For some reason, it went up to, for a split second, up to 73 watts. But it's normally, when I'm stressing it out, normally around about 48 watts, okay? Temperature-wise, it has peaked at a maximum of 82 degrees. That is on the CPU package, as you can see there. No thermal throttling has taken place, but a lot of power limit throttling. That is normal because these CPUs will be doing that. They run into their set power limit. For example, this one has a power limit of 28 watts, the TDP from Intel that is set, so it's going to hit that, and that then lowers down the clocks a little bit. Keeps the temperatures in check there too as well. Not going over 82 is actually very good. What about the fan noise? So when it's not really doing anything, the fans do turn off, thankfully. When they cycle on, there's a little bit of noise, and it does get a little bit loud too once it gets on to, say, the higher RPM settings. You definitely hear it. It's not as quiet as the last mini PC I just reviewed in the channel. Here is a sample of it under load here. And you hear that, yes, it's a little loud, but it's not that bothersome, to me. If you have it behind your TV or your monitor out of the way, you're not going to hear it as bad as having it sitting right in front of you, of course. But here's that sample of the fan noise. And no, this is not a slideshow. Gaming performance now, this is Cyberpunk 2077. Demanding AAA titles like this are not playable on this configuration. This hardware does need a dedicated GPU. So you can see about 9 frames per second, choppy, terrible, horrible. I would get sick playing this at this kind of frame rate. It's just impossible. You can't, okay? So that's why I say it's not playable, this game. You can see thermals, 73, 76 degrees, capping out at the 28 watt power limit there. So you could tweak up that power limit a little bit, but you'd be pushing then, of course, probably up to and over 80 degrees running into thermal throttling. So this is not looking too bad at all. In fact, this is very, very similar performance, around 40 frames per second to the Vega 10 graphics on that last mini PC I reviewed. So this for integrated graphics, 1080p on what is basically the default settings, medium for the population density, viewing distance and everything like that. This is not bad. This is, okay, a little bit lower maybe. I'm seeing now around 34, 35 frames per second, where the Vega 10 with the 10 cores was able to achieve around 40. So yes, that one is faster, but at least this is playable. Now dipping down to 29, 28 frames per second, and around 70 degrees. Fan noise, it's a little loud, but it's okay. It's not bad. It sounds just similar to a gaming laptop, really. 100 frames per second through here. Not looking too bad. And the power consumption, looking at my wall meter now, 55 watts is the maximum draw under load gaming. And okay, someone's thrown out some smoke there. We're still hitting 80 frames per second, so not too bad. A bit of a frame dip just then. And fan noise, I just got my meter out. Oh, I managed to get a kill there. Bit of luck. Fan noise is 44 decibels at maximum load with that GPU and the CPU all being kind of stressed out. Well, someone is shooting at me, but where was that coming from? Just up here. Oh, terrible aim. All over the place. Alright, that's enough of my terrible gameplay there. At least I got one kill. And my Linux Mint test here, this is the latest build, which I think is 20 point something. Now, I tested this out on the last mini PC with the same exact wireless card, which is Intel's AX200, and I had no problems with it. But here with this mini PC, for some reason, the drivers are not found for that AX200 Wi-Fi card, so I need to hunt around and try and find a workaround and a fix. I'm using the exact same pen drive as last time, and the new Linux builds do support this wireless card, so it's a bit odd that it's not working, but hey, I'm sure there's an easy fix. Someone will know. I mean, if you're experienced with Linux, you know how to get the driver for that. And the LAN ports are working there too as well. As you can see, those are both listed, so you can connect them up if you can, if possible, or install a USB to Wi-Fi card to get the driver, then you'll be set up and running with Linux. Alright, so I didn't get too deep into general performance. I don't tend to do that with these more powerful mini PCs. It's only like the really low-end stuff that has, say, the Saurons in it that I would show you documents and things like that. But to say that this one is quite fast, it's quick, it's smooth, any normal kind of operations in Windows are all executed very quickly with the NVMe SSD. Now, it's not the fastest one out there that I have seen, of course, but this is reasonably quick. That's still faster than SATA 3 that you're going to get out of this particular machine. So really good build quality. I like the build. The fingerprint reader is an additional there that if you needed that security or you're tired of typing in passwords, you can just use your finger to unlock your system there. That's good. So we're running Windows 10 Home as well on here. Dual channel RAM, plenty of storage expansion options is another pro there with this particular model. Now you can run 3 4K displays out of this, but I could only get the 4K 60 Hz out of the display port and the front Type-C port. For some reason, the HDMI port I don't think is HDMI 2.0 A spec. It is, I believe, just HDMI 1.4, and that is why it's limited to the 4K 30 Hz, unfortunately. But just use a DisplayPort to Type-C adapter that you can get if you needed the 4K 60 that is with this particular machine. So the performance of that integrated graphics, it's more potent than the typical Intel performance that is normally quite poor. So you can get away with some light gaming. So the titles I showed you like GTA 5, it's an old game, but it can run well in 1080p with an over 30 frames per second to around 40 frames per second average with normal settings. If you lower those settings down to the lowest possible, then of course you get a nice boost in the frame rate and the performance. Demanding AAA titles like Cyberpunk 2077, no go there at all. That was like a slideshow and only about 8 to 9 frames per second. It was terrible performance there. Now with the Linux support, I don't know what was going on, but I couldn't get the driver just out of the box kind of configuration with Linux Mint to work with that Wi-Fi 8X200 chip, and that's Wi-Fi 6 of course. So with the Windows 10 setup, you can push really good transfer speeds with that particular one. We've got the dual LAN ports on there too as well. So what about the cons of this machine? What are the things that I don't particularly like about it? Well, the fan noise is slightly irritating, okay? It cycles on and off, and before it gets onto the low RPM, it does a kind of funny wind-up noise that is slightly irritating there. And if you're pushing it very, very hard continually like gaming or video editing, then the fan noise is a constant around 44 decibels, which is certainly not the quietest I have reviewed in the channel because it has the dual fans in it, is probably why, and they're smaller fans there. And the other thing is the price tag. So it is a little pricey, I think, for the fact that, okay, it does have the Iris Plus graphics, and it's a very good build quality, good expansion options. It's an 8th gen chip now, so not the latest exactly. And I would love to see them releasing, which I'm sure they'll do probably next year, 11th gen Intel mini PCs as well. So that is my review there of the Beelink GTI with the i5 8259U with the Iris Plus 655 graphics.